Okay, so we're diving deep today into something pretty messy in the K-pop world.
Messy is putting it mildly, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, what's happening right now between NewJeans, their agency ADOR, and of course the K-pop powerhouse HYBE Corporation, it's way more than like your typical industry gossip, you know?
Oh, absolutely. This has the potential to like really shake things up, not just for NewJeans who are at the top of their game right now, but I think for the whole K-pop landscape, this could have ripple effects.
Exactly. And for those who maybe haven't been following the story super closely, let's rewind a bit back to how NewJeans burst onto the scene.
Because their arrival was anything but typical. Yeah.
Anything but. It was July 2022, and most groups, you had this whole like pre-debut rollout teasers, photos, the whole 9 yards. But ADOR, under the leadership of Min Hee-jin, they just kind of dropped the music video for attention out of nowhere.
It was a power move for sure. Like,
Yeah.
hey, we're here, we're NewJeans, deal with it.
And the world did deal with it. I mean, everyone was talking about them. And it wasn't just the surprise factor.
No, the group itself just had this like instant appeal, this really fresh vibe.
Right. The 5 members, Minji Hani, Danielle Heron, and Hyein, they just clicked.
Yeah.
You know, what was it about them that made them stand out so much so quickly?
Well, for one, they had this very distinct sound.
Yeah, like that whole Y2K thing is very much their own.
Exactly. It was Y2K, but like filtered through their own lens, you know? It was smooth R&B, super catchy pop melodies, but with these like subtle electronic touches.
And it didn't feel like they were chasing trends. They were setting them.
100%. And it wasn't just the music, of course. It was
Yeah.
the whole aesthetic, the fashion, the styling.
Yeah.
The music videos had this like very specific energy.
Like a cool girl nostalgia thing almost.
Yes. And it resonated because it felt authentic. It didn't feel manufactured.
And that authenticity really shined through in their performances too.
Well, absolutely. They had the talent to back it up.
And then Hype Boy dropped, and that just cemented everything.
Like, okay, this isn't a fluke. This is a group with staying power.
And then came Ditto, which honestly felt like an instant classic that winter. It was everywhere.
A cultural phenomenon for sure.
And award shows, streaming records, social media dominance, they just skyrocketed to the top.
Yeah, their trajectory has been remarkable, honestly unprecedented.
But now here's where things get complicated. See, ADOR, the agency behind NewJeans, they're not this like independent powerhouse. They're actually a subsidiary of HYBE.
Yes, HYBE, the entertainment giant behind groups like, BTS.
The biggest name in K-pop, basically.
Pretty much. And that relationship between ADOR and HYBE is crucial to understanding this whole mess.
Okay, so break it down for us. What's the ownership structure like?
So HYBE owns a controlling 80% stake in ADOR, with Min Hee-jin holding most of the remaining 20%.
Okay, so even though Min Hee-jin, the CEO of ADOR, is the mastermind behind NewJeans, HYBE ultimately has the final say in everything.
On paper, yes. And that's where the tension starts to build.
Because you have this incredibly successful group crafted by this visionary leader, but the real power lies with this much larger corporation.
Right, and I think it's important to remember that Min Hee-jin, she's not some newcomer.
Oh, definitely. She has this amazing track record from her time at SM Entertainment. She was behind some of the most legendary K-pop groups.
Oh, like Girls' Generation, SHINee.
Yeah.
Huge names, huge impact.
So she comes to ADOR with this proven ability to create stars. And she does it again with NewJeans.
In a spectacular way.
But then things start to go south.
Yeah, April 2024, HYBE announces an audit of ADOR.
Not usually a good sign.
No, it's basically a declaration of war. It means trust has eroded, and then the accusations start flying.
Okay, so what exactly was HYBE accusing Min Hee-jin of?
A lot, actually. They claim she was orchestrating this whole plan to basically wrestle control of ADOR away from HYBE.
And take NewJeans with her, essentially.
Exactly. They said she was courting external investors, trying to get them to buy out HYBE's shares.
Which would give her majority ownership.
Right. They also accused her of leaking confidential company information.
And get this, they even claimed she was consulting shamans for business advice.
It was a wild set of accusations.
Definitely designed to paint her in a negative light.
To discredit her leadership.
So how did Min Hee-jin respond to all of this?
Well, she held this press conference that was,
Dramatic.
to say the least. It was emotional, raw, and she completely denied every single one of HYBE's accusations.
And her central argument was that HYBE was trying to sabotage her and NewJeans.
And she had a very specific example to back that up.
That whole copycat allegation.
Right. She basically pointed to ILLIT, a new girl group that debuted under Bellift Lab, another subsidiary of HYBE.
And she claimed that ILLIT was a blatant ripoff of NewJeans.
Like their whole concept, aesthetic, branding, everything.
Which, honestly, if you look at it side by side, it's hard to disagree.
Yeah, there are definitely some striking similarities.
So Min Hee-jin framed this whole thing as this battle between artistic integrity and corporate greed.
Like HYBE was trying to homogenize NewJeans and capitalize on their success by creating a cheap imitation.
And that really resonated with a lot of fans.
It tapped into this fear that K-pop is becoming too manufactured, too focused on profits over creativity.
So with all these accusations and counter-accusations flying around, it was pretty clear this was going to be a full-blown legal battle.
Oh, yeah. And a complex one at that, because there are multiple legal issues at play here.
Okay, let's break them down one by one. What's the first one?
Well, I think the most straightforward one is the potential breach of contract between HYBE and Min Hee-jin.
Right, because HYBE seemed pretty convinced that she had violated her CEO contract.
Yeah, and there are a few potential violations they could be focusing on.
Like what?
Well, firstly, there's fiduciary duty, which basically means that as CEO Min Hee-jin has a legal obligation to act in the best interests of the company, which includes HYBE as the majority shareholder.
So HYBE could argue that her alleged attempts to take control of ADOR and NewJeans were a breach of that duty.
Exactly, because those actions could be seen as prioritizing her own interests over those of HYBE.
And then there's the accusation of misappropriation of company resources.
Right. HYBE might claim that she used ADOR's funds or assets without proper authorization.
Maybe to fund her alleged plan to separate from HYBE.
Potentially. And then there's the claim about disclosing confidential information, perhaps to those potential investors she was allegedly talking to.
And depending on her contract, there might even be a non-compete clause.
Right, which could prevent her from working with other K-pop companies or starting her own agency.
Especially if that agency was going to manage NewJeans.
Exactly. Of course, we don't know the exact details of her contract.
Right, that's all confidential.
But those types of clauses are pretty standard in executive agreements.
So HYBE definitely seems to have some ammunition for their breach of contract argument. But what about Min Hee-jin's claim of intellectual property infringement?
Ah, that's where things get trickier.
Right, because she's basically saying that ILLIT is infringing on the brand of NewJeans.
And when she says brand, she's talking about a whole range of elements.
Not just like a song or an outfit.
No, it's more like the entire concept, the overall aesthetic, their specific style choices, the choreography, their marketing even.
She's arguing that ILLIT is too similar to NewJeans across the board.
To the point where it's causing confusion in the marketplace and potentially harming NewJeans' brand identity.
But proving that kind of infringement in K-pop is really difficult, isn't it?
Oh, it's a huge challenge because the industry is built on trends, and there's a lot of borrowing and reinterpretation of ideas.
So where do you draw the line between inspiration and outright copying?
That's the million-dollar question. And legally, Min Hee-jin would have to prove that ILLIT copied very specific and protectable elements of NewJeans' brand.
Like elements that are unique to NewJeans and not just general K-pop trends.
Right. And she'd also have to demonstrate that this copying has caused actual harm to NewJeans.
Like financial losses or damage to their reputation.
Exactly. It's a high bar to clear.
And HYBE has a pretty strong counter-argument here, don't they?
Oh, for sure. They can just say, hey, we own 80% of ADOR, which means we own the intellectual property associated with NewJeans.
So legally, they have a claim to the brand of NewJeans.
Yeah, it's this classic tension between creative control and corporate ownership.
Min Hee-jin might be the visionary, but HYBE ultimately holds the legal rights.
At least that's how they likely argue it.
Okay, so we've got breach of contract and IP infringement. What's the third legal battleground here?
Well, it's a shareholder dispute.
Right, because remember, Min Hee-jin owns 20% of ADOR, and HYBE owns 80%.
And that gives HYBE a lot of power.
Like what kind of power?
Well, they can call shareholder meetings and vote on major decisions.
Like removing Min Hee-jin as CEO.
Yes, and they could also appoint new directors to the ADOR board.
Which would basically give them complete control over NewJeans.
Effectively. So while Min Hee-jin's 20% stake gives her some influence,
it's not enough to block HYBE if they're determined to push something through.
Not unless she can prove they're acting in bad faith or unfairly oppressing her as a minority shareholder.
Which, again, is a tough legal battle.
Definitely. And then, of course, there's the potential for defamation lawsuits.
Oh, right, because both sides have made some pretty strong accusations publicly.
Yeah, HYBE's allegations against Min Hee-jin about the power grab and the leaking of information, if those turn out to be false, she could sue them for defamation.
On the flip side, Min Hee-jin's claims about HYBE sabotaging her and NewJeans.
HYBE could potentially sue her for that if they believe it's damaged their reputation.
So with all these potential legal battles brewing, what does the future hold for NewJeans?
It's honestly hard to say. There are so many possible outcomes.
Like, what's the worst-case scenario?
Well, the worst-case scenario for Min Hee-jin is that HYBE wins outright. They remove her as CEO and take full control of ADOR and NewJeans.
And the risk there is that NewJeans loses the unique identity that Min Hee-jin created.
Exactly, that they become just another HYBE group churning out music that fits the corporate mold.
And for fans, that would be devastating.
Absolutely, because they fell in love with NewJeans for their originality, their authenticity.
Okay, so that's the nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
What about something more optimistic?
Well, there's always the possibility of a settlement.
What would that look like?
It could involve a compromise where Min Hee-jin retains some creative control, but with more oversight from HYBE.
Or maybe she gets a financial payout and agrees to step away gracefully.
Right. Or they could restructure the relationship between ADOR and HYBE to give ADOR more autonomy.
But given how acrimonious things have gotten, a settlement seems unlikely.
Yeah, it would take a lot of willingness to compromise on both sides.
And then there's the long shot possibility that Min Hee-jin somehow pulls off a miracle.
Either by winning a legal challenge against HYBE or finding the funding to buy them out.
But let's be real, that's highly improbable.
It would be a huge upset.
And then, of course, there's the worst-case scenario for NewJeans themselves.
Which is that this whole fight drags on for years and they get caught in the crossfire.
And that could seriously damage their careers.
No doubt. The uncertainty, the legal battles, the negative publicity, it could all take a toll on their momentum and their ability to make music.
And we haven't even talked about the members themselves.
Right. They're the ones who are ultimately affected by all of this.
I mean, could they potentially try to get out of their contracts with ADOR?
It's not out of the question. This whole feud could be seen as creating a hostile work environment.
And they could argue that it's detrimental to their careers.
Exactly. And if they did try to break their contracts, that would be a whole other legal battle.
A mess on top of a mess.
Basically. So, yeah, the future of NewJeans is very much up in the air.
And this whole saga has implications that go way beyond just this one group.
Oh, absolutely. This is a case study in the tensions between creative vision and corporate power in K-pop.
And it raises questions about intellectual property protection in an industry that's so trend-driven.
And it also highlights the immense power of K-pop fans.
I mean, NewJeans' fan base, the bunnies, they've been incredibly vocal throughout all of this.
And their opinions definitely carry weight.
This whole situation is a reminder that the K-pop industry isn't all glitz and glamour.
Behind the polished facade, there are real power struggles, legal battles, and the dreams of young artists at stake.
And it makes you wonder what the ideal balance is between artistic freedom and corporate control.
How do you foster creativity while also protecting the interests of the companies involved?
It's a tough question with no easy answers.
And one that the K-pop industry is going to have to grapple with for a long time to come.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into this very complicated situation.
It's been fascinating to unpack all of this.
And as this story continues to unfold, we'll be sure to keep you updated.
Because I have a feeling this is far from over.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
So until next time, keep listening.
And stay curious.
And maybe keep your fingers crossed for NewJeans.
I think we all are.